I've started to love poison swamps in From Software games. It wasn't always like this. Few things in the series have made me as frustrated as when I got to Blight Town too early without enough purple moss, and realized that even if I could make it through the poison swamp, the status effect was going to eat through not just my health bar, but a good chunk of my healing items too. The classic retort to someone saying these games are too difficult is to categorize them as, quote, hard but fair, meaning that they might demand a lot of a player in terms of reaction time and knowledge of enemies, but that every time you take damage or die, you're able to understand what error you made and improve upon it in the future. And having a swamp you need to wade through that almost unavoidably chews through your health bar on top of whatever damage you're also taking feels like it flies in the face of this. And sure, there is a lesson to take away. I needed to find some more necessary items to get through Blight Town, but I don't think that really counteracts the frustration of just how punishing these areas are. And there are others in different games that are even more cruel and require more exposure to poison to really see everything in the level. So my love for poison swamps didn't come from viewing them as fair, but really more the opposite. By being so cruel, they add so much texture to these games. I recently replayed Dark Souls 3, and when I got to Faron Keep, another poison swamp full of so much similar architecture, it seems like it was designed to get you lost. I loved it for two reasons. First, it makes things feel more like an adventure in a world that is not designed for you to survive. And also, it's funny. I was kind of cocky going in because I played the game before and I'd forgotten there's a bit where the swamp gets deeper and harder to move in. And just like, of course, it's not enough that you're already sapping my health bar and throwing a bunch of enemies at me. It's also going to become harder for me to move. And even if there's a way to get through all this without taking damage if you really know what you're doing, I don't think it's accidental that the experience for most people is getting hit while they're already down. There's a joy to these games in this occasional cruelty and the ability to laugh at yourself that I don't feel neatly fits within the hard but fair framework that is nonetheless just as much a part of this series' DNA and not an easily excisable mistake. In Lies of P, the biggest poison swamp has a bunch of islands that don't have the status effect, and the effects of poison can be almost completely negated by a couple of items you probably have in excess at this point or are able to buy for pretty cheap. Lies of P is a Souls-like, borrowing most identifiably from Bloodborne with its aesthetics and limited stat attributes, though loosely based on the story of Pinocchio. For Polygon, Ryan Gilliam wrote that Lies of P feels like the genuine article, a FromSoft game developed in an alternate dimension and somehow released in this one by mistake. And he's not alone.
It truly felt like Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls, actually oversaw this project.
If you told me FromSoft made this game, I'd probably believe you.
If there ever was a case for that happening, I think we have it here with Lies of P.
No, I don't think this is the most absurd sentiment. Lies of P really understands what works in Souls combat, but it's missing that comedic cruelty and that hostility in its environment that makes it feel like it wasn't meant for you. Despite being a really difficult and demanding game, it still makes so many steps to be kinder to the player, such that I wouldn't say it's a great game because it perfectly imitates the From Software style, but rather because it differs in really conspicuous ways, and differs so consistently in favor of readability and player convenience that it succeeds as its own different thing. I know this is an odd game to call kind. There are some bosses in here that demand so much in terms of timing, parries, and dodging that most anyone playing this game is going to get stuck on at least one of them for several hours. What's more, this game is more linear than anything in the Souls series, so rather than being able to just go and try something else in the world until you're ready to come back to the boss, you're locked out of pretty much all new content until you can deal with that one challenge. And that's really frustrating. However, when fighting these bosses, I tended to find that each death I was learning at least something about their attack pattern, and my deaths came after completely running out of healing items rather than having my entire health bar drained by a grab attack or combo before I had a chance to use any of them. This is true of a lot of the best bosses in From Software games, but it's far more universal in Lies of P. And the flip side of not having the option to explore a side area before beating a boss is that you aren't encountering bosses or areas you aren't appropriately leveled for, eliminating another avenue for deaths that feel unfair. Overall, these games are going for different things. FromSoft games are adventures through dying worlds, constantly reminding you that they are hostile to your existence, whereas Lies of P feels a lot closer to a traditional hero's journey, where enemy placement and boss progression is there to teach you more than block your path. I think that Lies of P is more committed to hard but fair than any Souls game is. And yes, I get that that point is messy. For one, it's still a harder game than many Souls games. There's no option for some kind of magic or range build, and bosses are really aggressive and complicated. But there's nothing like a poison swamp. Nothing as bullshit as some of the archers in Dark Souls 1 and 3, or some of the chests in Elden Ring that teleport you to high-level locations. There's this great clip of someone in Elden Ring walking across a bridge as a boulder rolls towards them. They do the intuitive thing and jump onto the railing to get out of the way of the boulder, and the boulder stops, locks onto them, and then knocks them off the bridge. And on top of dying from the fall, a bunch of ranged enemies in the area impale them with spears. This is the kind of stuff that Lies of P does not emulate, and what I mean when I say it's kinder. It also takes steps to be less opaque and more flexible. Anytime you acquire a key item or do something in the world to advance a quest, you get a marker on the fast travel screen telling you where to go. It does the work to make sure you see everything that's in it. It's a really nice concession to the player too to split weapons into two pieces, one half that scales based on your attributes and one that is totally independent of it, making far more of the arsenal relevant to you regardless of what stats you upgrade. You even get to control what music's playing in the hub area. It's a nice twist on the iconic music of Majula or Round Table Hold. Also, the story's kinder, or like less bleak. Not that there isn't darkness, but it doesn't really feel like a From Software story. It feels like a story that belongs with all the changes I just mentioned, that also resonates with the idea of an imitation of something brimming with its own unique kind of life. I don't dislike FromSoft's bleakness, the fact that you need to be really attentive to make sure you don't miss quests, that you're sometimes forced to commit to certain weapon types, or that they sometimes really feel like they're laughing at you. I would not call Lies of P a superior game, but it's one that differs in really thoughtful and consistent ways. And I think it's this difference, a game made by people that clearly love Souls games, but also had their own personal preferences they felt strongly about, that has led to Lies of P's success, rather than its ability to perfectly imitate From Software. I'm really excited to see where the series goes from here, and I can't wait for the DLC later this year. As much as I've sung this game's praises, I hope that the level design gets more complicated. While it does kind of fit that this game is more linear and controlled, I can't conceive of a world where I would be complaining if there were more alternate paths and side areas, though I imagine the lack of it is mostly to do with development time, where they don't have the groundwork or necessarily resources and goodwill FromSoft has to do what they do. And I also have to wonder if that's part of the reason there aren't as many bullshit feeling deaths in this game. Even if the creators wanted to put them there, they're risking a lot with that. When Dark Souls and Demon Souls were coming out, games were a lot cheaper to make, and From Software was also far more established then than NeoWiz is now. So I'll be interested to see how their games change now that they've had one really big success under their belt. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, I have a lot of similar videos on my channel you can watch now, and please like and subscribe if you'd like to keep seeing something like this.